Well, I'm here in my isolated room here with the piano, able to start focusing on a couple of deferred projects that a busy schedule has pretty much kept me from, but now the schedule is not so busy. And one thing I was working on much of last year was putting together 24 preludes in what I call light jazz style. Really what these preludes were doing is paying homage to the person and work of Keith Emerson. This tie-in was because of the work of Emerson, Lake and Palmer, which was an influence on me when I was in high school. And when I wrote some of these pieces, that now has become some of these preludes. And I've shared some videos of those in the past. But it's been a while. Now, what I want to kind of share tonight is the sixth prelude in the set, which is the one in B minor, following the tonal scheme. And it's kind of an interesting idea. Again, tracking the idea of paying an homage to Keith Emerson. A lot of people know his work, know him as a rock musician, progressive jazz musician. But another element of his playing, which is really intriguing to fans of his works and Emerson, Lake and Palmer, is when he pays some homage to ragtime piano. Okay, so in a song, sometimes he'll actually put in like a rag or a blues element. I think many of us are very familiar, say, with when he gets to the end of like the song The Sheriff, okay? And then he's got this kind of saloon kind of piano, you'll kind of like this. You know, that kind of idea, all right? So, you know, he's ending that song with that, and it's sort of, as I said, this kind of saloon, raggy, swing piano. Maybe even more well-known is a song, Benny the Bouncer, where not only is he kind of doing ragtime, but it's on a 12-bar blues pattern. So maybe a little boogie woogie. You know, maybe even somebody hears a little Beatles Lady Godiva in there. But, you know, basically, so what you got is you got like a... So it's got this kind of, you know, what's our bluesing? So it's this 12-bar blues pattern, and yet it's rag, and it's kind of swing, and it's kind of boogie woogie. So it's kind of fun. So I'm sort of thinking, you know, I can't do a set of preludes paying homage to Keith Emerson without getting kind of a little ragtime in there, or at least some kind of progressive jazz type of fusion ragtime, as it were. And then now, for some reason, it's got really kind of crazy. Their very, very first album starts off with a song called The Barbarian. And those people who are in the know, understanding how Emerson sometimes likes to quote certain pieces from the classical repertoire, well, The Barbarian is really an ensemble take on a solo for the piano for Bartok called Allegro, Barbaro. All right, so you got this here. Bartok, Allegro, Barbaro. And, I mean, it's got this driving theme, right? I mean, you know, a lot of people know that theme. Now, meanwhile, of course, what they do is they kind of make it this kind of slow, kind of acid rock, kind of, you know, you've got this everything is distorted and it's just really, it's sort of like, it's Emerson's way of saying, you know, I play keyboard, but I can compete with the snarkiest electric guitar out there. And so he's going to use Bartok's music to do that. And so I got this kind of crazy idea. It's like, what if you actually take an homage to what ELP does with the Barbarian, and they make kind of a ragtime thing out of it. Now you're really kind of getting a whole bunch of different ideas. All right, so we've got that theme, and you know, again, I mean, if I'm doing it, say Emerson's tempo, it's more like. Right, you know, and so he's kind of like, so they kind of like go through all this theme, and then it finally gets to a point where now he's going to move to the piano, and Carl Palmer, the drummer, is going to do some really kind of nifty little drum thingy, and so now they're doing this middle section, really quoting Bartok pretty directly from the piano, right? Okay, so, you know, they're doing that section, and so, okay, so you've got all of that, where you got this middle section, and of course it's going to bring back some of the other elements, you know, so you've got where he's really getting this kind of savage thing going. Now, you have to really pay attention, not so much to Emerson's take on Bartok, but what Bartok does towards the end of the section. He starts doing some interesting little thing. Now, if you listen to the Emerson, Lake and Palmer, the Barbarian, you're not going to hear this. And if you're listening to the Allegro Barbaro of Bartok, you're going to have to really pay attention to hear this. But what Bartok gets like towards the end of that section, let's see. And then he's going, you know, is these little filigrees here. Now I'm starting to think, okay, I'm supposed to be doing some preludes that are like jazz. I mean, I'm trying to do Bartok. I'm trying to do rag. I'm really trying to mix some things up here. Well, if you want jazz, listen to this thing. I'm saying, wow, you know, that's actually pretty cool. So what I have is I decided to put the piece together, and the title is Tonk Mikro-Blues-Mos. But of course, that title writes itself, let's face it. So anyway, this is the Prelude number 6 in B minor, Bartok Mikro-Blues-Mos. And what it's going to do is I'm going to start off with that little riff. So it starts off like this. Okay, now this is B minor. The Allegro Barbaro of Bartok is in F sharp minor. That's kind of related, but it's not exact. But again, I think though that kind of clash between what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to sort of get that round peg in a square hole, and that actually is creating some of that tonal, almost pan-tonal tension in this piece. So, so you've got this opening idea. Now what you got to do is now it's got to be a 12-bar blues. But a different kind of 12-bar blues. Because I mean the opening riff in the left hand. And again, that's just kind of sort of borrowing off of that circle of fifths thing. Kind of like what he did. You know. That's you know, he's getting that whole thing going with the circle of fifths. So that's what I'm doing here. And then it's going to end on B, and then when it gets into the next pattern, it's going to get an E, back to B. Now it's going to go to F sharp. F sharp, then back to B. Okay, I mean, it's really disguised. I mean, it's to say, oh, that's a real straight blues, you know. Okay, it's kind of masked, doing a lot of different things here. It's kind of fast rag, it's kind of swinging. But here now, over that, you're going to have that little riff that Bartok slipped in there, and you almost don't hear it. So you got like this. That's actually the first 12-bar pattern, okay? Now, with the second 12-bar pattern, after you've heard that, now you're going to hear the more familiar first theme of the Allegro Barbaro over that ostinato pattern. And you're still going to hear that little riff in there, okay? But yeah, now again, with this, I'm having a little fun with this because, okay, Bartok works with a real strict tempo, okay? He wants this driving, savage, you know, barbaric, you know. So, you know, tempo giusto, we marks it, strict time. I'm having a little fun with it. Of course, I'm saying, hey, you know what? Let's just play, you know, tempo non troppo giusto. Not too strict, all right? So tempo non troppo giusto. So kind of let it sort of, you know, a little languid, a little swinging. You know, it's almost like after you've played it, you should want a cigarette, okay? I mean, that's kind of the style. Now, after it's kind of gone through that section, you know, now you gotta get to. Now, I'm not going to do some of the sostenutos and things that Bartok puts in there with that, because Emerson doesn't change tempo at all. He drives it. Now, I mean, this isn't even in the same key. All right, I mean, and I also notice that my bass is a little different. You know, it's okay, again, I'm playing with the circle of fifths thing. Then you get this sequence. Where are we? So this section here, okay, that's of course a direct quote out of Bartok. I can't directly quote too much because I'll get in trouble. But this, I mean, that's just like that's like the end of that section. Now, what's interesting is that when Bartok, you know, finally gets to the end of this section, he's actually almost at the end of the piece. Of course, he does that, you know, with this driving, you know, octave section, you know, and then all right, you know, and then Bartok's done. Okay, you know, so he does the octaves and he's done. When Emerson does those octaves, of course, now he's just getting up off the piano. He's going back to the organ, and they're going to kind of bring it home then with that full other section. So that's what I'm going to do with my piece, is I'm going to sort of return it to that original theme area. So after we have this, now we go back to... Now the thing is too, before I was doing this. Now I'm up here. same left-hand part, just up a third in the right hand, which actually further kind of contributes to the tonal ambiguity, as it were. So that's a little further, and it also just kind of brings some idea. But you know what's going to happen is that when I get to the end of that second 12 bar section, in the return section, I do the 12 bars, you know, and finally it's finishing with this. Now, this is going to sound like what ELP does with the piece, over my ostinato. Let me get. When you go back and listen to the Barbarian, that's really kind of what they're doing, okay? It's like that whole driving it. So that's what I'm deciding to do at the end of this piece. Now, then they just bring it home. Now, I don't have the luxury of having a Hammond organ and a bass guitar driving through a bunch of Marshall stacks with distortion. I've only got this piano, so I have to end it like a piano piece. So after that, I go back to this original idea. And then the absolute original idea, back to B minor, but not for long. So that's Bartok, Mikro-Blues-Mos, just say how that's working it. Now, I actually need to go back and practice this, so I get it, and I'm hoping maybe to have a halfway decent recording of it within the next couple weeks.